It seems that women in the West generally have a strong tendency to adore cats, but Japanese women don't seem to like them very much. And it's not just women. If you ask a man whether he prefers dogs or cats, it's a foregone conclusion that he will say he likes dogs better. That's not to say that everyone dislikes cats. There are surely people who love them, but I suspect that even for those people, the sentiment is quite different from the way they would cherish a small bird or a dog. Perhaps because of legends like the Nabeshima cat disturbance, there is an underlying notion of the cat as a demonic creature, preventing people from loving them as completely as they might a bird or a dog. Of course, many households keep cats, but it seems the purpose is largely to have them catch mice rather than to cherish them as pets. Even in language, the word cat Nico invariably carries a negative connotation. For instance, consider terms like nekobaba, feigning ignorance after pocketing something, neidgo, a coaxing, wheedling voice, nikos, a stooped back, Niko wakaburu, to hide one's claws, Niko no hitai, a very narrow space, lit. Cat's forehead, and Niko no mi fickle lit. Cat's eyes. Just looking at the characters brings to mind a petty thief sneaking in through someone's back door. It seems the Japanese have an instinctive tendency to dislike cats. Therefore, the idea of putting cat meat on the dinner table and smacking one's lips in delight is surely something the average person would never even consider. And yet, the cat is surprisingly delicious. I say this because I recently had the opportunity to taste cat myself and acquired a taste for it for the first time. Unlike beef, horse, or pork, it is tender and easy to chew, with a deliciousness similar to that of rabbit meat. It is said that fatty foods are not good for leprosy patients, so meat is generally avoided, but I wonder if it might not be better to eat things like cat from time to time. This is not to say one should eat it simply because it is delicious, but from the standpoint of maintaining physical strength, I believe low-fat meat is very necessary. But that aside, I entered this hospital in May of the year before last, so I have no way of knowing the details of what happened before then, but I hear that a great many were eaten. I had eaten dog before, so that wouldn't have surprised me, but I was truly astonished to hear they ate cats. However, as I grew accustomed to this hospital and began to frequent the severe illness wards and the inconvenienced dormitories, these are wards mainly for the blind, but also for those with crippled limbs, where fellow patients act as caretakers. One to a room, I came to see these acts as the expression of a somehow lovable human nature, something to be cherished rather than despised. If you stop and think about it, the experience of spending long years lying in a single room, wrapped head to toe in bandages like a stockfish, or being blind, or having prosthetic limbs, is by no means a pleasant one. Those who scornfully say that leprosy patients think of nothing but food and women, it is those who scorn who deserve to be scorned themselves. In reality, for someone lacking a lofty spiritual life who finds themselves in the inconvenienced dormitory, what else is there to think about besides those two things? There is nothing. And as for a lofty spiritual life, unless one possesses an incredibly strong will, it amounts to nothing in such a situation. Just the other day, I was on duty in the psychiatric ward and heard someone say with great force, "Eating is my greatest pleasure." I eagerly await my 3 meals a day, wondering what the side dishes will be. Thinking about that is my greatest joy. The man who said this seemed to be quite educated, but he had gone mad after becoming blind and was put in that ward, though his mind is now as sharp as any ordinary person's. Indeed, when I start to think about my own body, rotting away day by day at a speed invisible to the eye, I fall into a gloomy state, wondering when I myself might go mad. My body is rotting in the face of this fact. Is there anything that holds power? It may sound like I'm exaggerating, but to me, philosophy, religion, and even art seem powerless. Furthermore, even those of us with mild symptoms who can currently move about freely are destined to one day become residents of the inconvenienced dormitory. It is an inescapable fate. Seen in that light, the desire to seek supreme pleasure in a single slice of cat meat is a poignant and lovable feeling. It is not savage or anything of the sort. There is another reason I think we should cherish those who eat cats and other things. It is because I perceive, at the bottom of their hearts, a fleeting hope, like a magic spell, that their leprosy might be miraculously cured. It's not that they consciously eat these things thinking it will cure their disease, but I believe this feeling flows beneath their consciousness. And it's not just these unconscious acts. Sometimes they deliberately engage in strange eating habits. It's a story from quite a while ago, but there was a rumor that a certain Korean patient had swallowed a lizard whole. I don't know if it's true or false, as I didn't see it myself, but it seems safe to say it was a fact. I was quite close with this person and once listened to his life story late into the night. I intend to ask him about it directly the next time I see him. He was a laborer, and one day while repairing the roads in the hospital grounds, the men were discussing their illness. One of them said that if you swallow a live lizard whole, your disease will be cured instantly. It's not that he believed the words at face value, but he apparently put it into practice at once. At first, he tried to swallow it from the tail, but it was long and kept wriggling, so it didn't go well. Next, he suddenly gulped it down from the head. What if he had died from such a reckless act? But such advice is meaningless. I might die, and it's fine if I do, but just maybe, my disease will be cured. I can understand this feeling of gambling with one's life. Given these circumstances, eating a cat here is a commonplace, everyday affair. Of course, it would be a great mistake to think we eat cats every day. We don't eat them that often. Women, however, are quite superstitious, and I have yet to hear of a cat being eaten in the women's wards. The other day, we procured a red dog and tried to make wankatsu dog cutlets instead of tonkatsu pork cutlets to have a female friend try it, but she absolutely refused to eat it. The cat I ate was a plump tabby that looked to be about 5 can, approximate. 18. 75 kilograms, which had been caught in a deadfall trap by the chicken coop. It was a stray cat that had been constantly raiding the coop, and we were at our wits' end. I certainly had no thought that my illness might be cured, but I had heard so many times how delicious it was that I thought I would take this opportunity to try it. The chicken coop is right next to the dormitory where I live, and about 800 chickens are currently being raised there. The raising is, of course, part of the patient's work. The eggs and the milk from the cow sheet are the best sources of nutrition given to the patients in the severe illness wards. Because these important chickens were being stolen night after night, we set up a deadfall trap, and the next morning, that plump cat was caught in it. A deadfall trap, a batten, is a bit difficult to explain in writing, but in short, the cat's favorite food is hung inside, and as soon as it touches it, a thick plank weighted with a large stone comes crashing down from above. It's probably called a batten because it falls with a batten sound. Being crushed under a thick plank, the cat naturally becomes as flat as a board. The one I ate was also flattened in the middle. When I touched it with my finger, it was cold and had a strange texture, both mushy and hard at the same time, a truly unpleasant feeling. And yet, its eyes were wide open in a glare, making it terribly eerie. I thought it must have been incredibly painful to be crushed by that heavy, weighted plank, but everyone else was laughing and saying things like, "What a fat one, this thief cat. So fat, and now he's gone and gotten himself flattened." As I looked at its strange form, flattened like a rice cake and glaring with those eyes, I too found it somehow comical and burst out laughing. I should mention this in passing, but for some reason, I have developed a habit of finding that the more profound or gruesome something is, the more comical it starts to seem. A scene so moving it makes one cry is invariably comical in its outward appearance, and when I look at people's faces, the deeper their suffering has been, the more comical they appear to me. I know that using a word like comical in this context might sound like I'm joking and doesn't quite hit the mark, but there seems to be no other word that can properly express my feeling. In the hospital where I am now, there is a man who has miraculously lived with leprosy for 61 years, and another who has lost both hands and feet, is blind and bald, and looks like a skeleton draped in skin. Every time I see these people, I think, what a pure comicality. Of course, I am not joking or jesting. Who could joke or jest in such a situation? I say this with a feeling of utter necessity. Furthermore, I feel that this sense of the comical can be said to apply not only when looking at the external aspects of humanity, but also to the internal, to the workings of one's own mind. To tell the truth, I myself have run up against this many times and been troubled by it. One example is suicide. When I am on the verge of hanging myself, I invariably fall into an indescribable state of comicality and am unable to go through with it. This might just be my own experience. Needless to say, the suffering is profound, something that cannot be expressed with pen and paper. And yet, when it comes to the critical moment, my suffering suddenly seems to detach itself from me. Then, the pain of this detachment becomes greater than the pain of the act of dying itself, and I end up thinking, what on earth am I supposed to do? In the end, my head is enveloped in a nonsensical comicality, where I can't tell if I'm sad, in pain, or amused. I suspect that suffering is the womb of the comical. I am suddenly reminded of Freud's pleasure-unpleasure principle, and it seems this feeling could be analyzed by it. Yet, I feel there is something that cannot be fully analyzed by such scientific methods. My logic is becoming dubious, but to be honest, I don't fully understand the relationship between this suffering and comicality myself. To digress once more and turn back to the external, the psychology of a person who commits suicide is always peculiar, and it seems that no matter how much a third party observes, there remains a part that cannot be understood. In fact, it is something that even the person themselves doesn't understand, and at that point, one has no choice but to think that it is connected to the spirit of the creator. And so, for the third party, only the comicality produced by the suicide stands out, with the result that they cannot touch the subject itself, not even with a single finger. In the case of the cat, it is of course not suffering but eeriness, yet there too, a comicality lies hidden. Now, about the cat meat. Just like dogs, cats emit an indescribable foul odor right after being killed, making them inedible for a while. It's a smell like rot, or something raw, or earthy, or greasy, and yet none of those, a disgusting smell that can only be described as cat smell, and it's simply not something one can eat. However, if you bury it in the earth for 2 to 3 days, and then take it out, the smell is completely gone. Once it's prepared, it wouldn't be the least bit strange if the President of the United States himself were to purr with delight over it. When eeriness reaches the point where it takes on a comical flavor, one can no longer just call it eerie. It becomes a kind of ghastly intensity, like the eyes of the dead cat. It's impossible to skin it with the head still attached. So, first and foremost, the head must be removed. After much thought, I wrapped the head in newspaper and, with a single effort, finally cut it off. The rest was easy. The skin peeled off without any trouble. Since this was all happening within a hospital and with only men on hand, we didn't know any sophisticated cooking methods, so we simply stewed it with sugar and soy sauce. But as I said before, it was unbelievably delicious. And since it was the first time for all of us, we were filled with curiosity as we gathered around the brazier while it cooked, wondering what it would taste like. It's a cat that lived on a diet of chickens. There's no way it could taste bad. They say you can use the skin for a chemise, don't they? It's a waste to throw it away. Just eating the meat is plenty. Don't be greedy. It's only because I got leprosy that I get to eat cat. As it came to a rolling boil, we would grab at the steam to try and smell it, or pick out a piece that was still reddish and not fully cooked. The anticipation was immense. The taste was slightly sour, a rather unusual flavor. It was tender like rabbit, and its greatest virtue was its low fat content. We even discussed right then and there that it would be suitable for old people with bad teeth. We later lamented that if only we had a skilled cook, we could have eaten it in a more delicious way. Afterwards, I thought about it deeply. How foolish human beings are to have not eaten something so delicious until now, simply because they find it unpleasant. If a cat is unpleasant, then so are cows and horses. What's more, if you see where pigs are raised, you can only think that cats are far cleaner. In our own lives, too, pleasure can only be obtained after passing through despair, anxiety, and fear. If there is such a thing as a nihilism that affirms everything, it probably lies somewhere around here. Either you deny everything or you affirm everything. I don't think nihilism can exist in any other way. Even enlightenment is unthinkable outside of such a nihilism. When it comes to this, I cannot help but think that the only path to save human beings, no, to save lepers, is the path that leads to nihilism. What I call comical, though I don't fully understand it myself, must be this nihilism that arises in a fleeting moment. However, for people like us, it is by no means easy to place our daily lives within this nihilism. No matter how I think about it, it seems to me that there is a destiny within human beings that prevents them from being able to achieve nihilism. To approach nihilism, I believe a will that is stronger than human is necessary. An affirmative nihilism that accepts everything besides this, there is no way to save myself. And if the only thing we can rely on in our lives is will, and if it is human destiny to be unable to achieve nihilism, then the only thing that can save me is will alone. The conversation has taken a strange turn. Let's stop with the theorizing. In any case, I believe that cat cuisine is something that should be widely practiced among the general public from now on.